freaks and geeks. Today we're here with one of my favorite cars. Of course, it's an R34 Skyline, but what is it exactly? Because it's not a normal R34 Skyline. The pertinent information is that this is a coupe, it is a 5-speed manual, and it is a turbocharged RB25 DET Neo. And plenty of you playing along at home are probably saying, Nick, of course, I know what that is. That's a GTT. This isn't a GTT. So what is it exactly? To explain what this is truthfully, I'm going to have to get into it pretty deeply because this is something I feel passionate about. You see, so many people come in and they say, look, I want this type of car. I want a Chaser. I want a Supra. I want a Sylvia. I want an R34 Skyline. And I ask them, well, what kind of car do you want? There's lots of different kinds out there. You got crazy modified builds. You got stock ones. You got low mileage ones. You got slow ones. You got fast ones. What do you want? And a lot of the time, they just say, well, I want something that's clean. Well, yeah, don't we all? We've been importing cars for right at 10 years now, maybe a little bit longer than 10 years. And there's a couple of things we've learned in that time. Number one, washing machines in Japan don't have a dryer function. So make sure that you hang them up. Don't let them get sour and mildewy. Nobody wants that. And number two, cars that were automatic are just cleaner. They're way cleaner. Now, don't get me wrong. That's not to say that there are factory manual, factory turbo cars out there that are beautiful and clean and are just an absolute specimen of Nissan museum quality. But the likelihood is greater. It's a greater likelihood. But you can reduce your odds of having a car that's been drifted or raced or, not taken care of quite as well when they got cheap in 2007 by getting one that's an automatic or getting one that's a non-turbo. Just finding one that has something about it that takes a little bit of that hooning performance edge off. You know what I mean? But this particular car started out life as a 2-liter automatic, but because Skylines are easy to work on and they're like Legos and all the parts just kind of go together and you can throw them at the car and they basically install themselves, this car has had an engine and transmission conversion over to an RB25 DET Neo and a 30A 5-speed transmission. In my opinion, in the Hoshi Motion opinion, this is a great way to get a car that has every bit of performance as a GTT and is cleaner and a little bit cheaper too. This one right now we have for sale. If you're watching this video, soon after it's released, it's offered for sale right at $40,000. It's $39,999. It's under $40,000 for a very clean 80,000 kilometer 2-door coupe 5-speed turbo R34. First of all, the car is beautiful. It is very, very nice. It's clean. It is rust-free, 100% rust-free. Go to B-roll of the shock towers. It's really, really nice. Overall, the car is something to be proud of, and it's something that is a very, very clean platform to build upon. There are certain platforms out there which this is not as viable of a solution because the differences between a lower trim model and a top trim model are just a little bigger, Things like in the case of Toyotas, sometimes the tranny tunnel is different. You got to cut and weld, and sometimes the motor mounts are different and things like that. But in the case of Skylines, if you're going from an RB20 DE non-turbo all the way up to an RB25 DET turbo, they kind of just go together like peanut butter and jelly. If I was taking out an RB20 of this car, I would actually think it's just about as easy to put an RB25 DET back in than it would be to put the RB20 back into the thing. So it's low risk is what I'm saying. And we've gone over this car with a fine-tooth comb, inspected everything about it, and the work is good. The parts are good. Everything is in line with this thing to just be able to hop in it and drive it. So the key differences between a GTT and a GT are the engine, the transmission, the brakes, and the HICUS, the 4-wheel steering. The front brakes have actually been upgraded. What we're working with here are R34 Brembo front brakes. We have nice shiny calipers that we have refinished for you. We got brand new pads, we got brand new rotors. That is great. It's actually better than a GTT. And then when we go around back to the HICUS, well, don't even get me started. There's a lot of different thoughts and ideas and camps out there about HICUS. Is it good? Is it bad? In my personal opinion, I don't really notice it. These R34s are the later gen HICUS. They are electric HICUS, super HICUS. So it's better than the old stuff. It's not hydraulic, it's electric. But when it's working correctly, I don't know it's there. And when it's not working correctly, I get a light on the dash and there's other bushings and things in the back that have to be aligned, and tow is a factor and things like that. So forget what I say. There's lots of people out there that don't like HICUS. And You don't have to delete it on this. You don't have to put a lockout bar. You don't have to trick a computer. Nissan did it for you. There is no lockout bar. There's none of that back here. It's a super clean setup. If you don't like Hikes, then you really need to get one of these cars because it's just clean and simple. We also have these brand new Inkei NT03 RR wheels. These are one of my favorite types of wheels. When we had this car coming over on the way, I really thought that it needed a good set of wheels. Now, factory GTT wheels are 17 inch. They're 17 by 8. These are 17 by 9. So we're going +1 on the width. We're wearing some 245, 45, 17 Falcon ZX ZE950 tires. Just a good all seasons tire. It's not going to wear out too quickly, but they're brand new. Give you nice grip. What more could you ask for? And of course, when you have a car that's only got 80,000 original kilometers, the interior is super nice. Cut to B-roll of the interior. It's just clean in here. It feels good. It smells good. It doesn't smell like smoke. It doesn't smell like sweat. It doesn't smell like, I don't know, what do Skylines smell like usually? Yeah, power steering fluid. Doesn't smell like power steering fluid. Yeah, it's nice in here. It gives you a good feeling. It's comfortable. There's no rips or big scratches or anything on the interior. It's just super duper clean and original. Another reason that I tend to get pretty excited and like these types of swap cars is because after 25, 26, 27 years, a lot of the things on these cars just don't get touched. Things like motor mounts, things like tranny crossmember mounts, things like even clutches, slave cylinders, master cylinders, are things that are kind of primed to just go out. It's not unheard of to buy one of these cars in really nice condition and then have to replace all that stuff pretty soon after because they have lots of rubber components and things like that that just don't last very long. But if you have a car like this, all of those pieces have been touched. Things like the clutch master, the slave cylinder, the clutch, the motor mounts, the training mount, things like that get touched, they get inspected, and they get replaced. And overall, what you get is a car that's just kind of sorted. Overall, we've gone through this car, like I said, with a fine-tooth comb. It's ready to hit the road. So why don't we do that? Why don't we hit the road? I'm gonna be serious now. Getting behind the wheel of this car, the first thing that you notice is that it feels very light. It feels very purposeful and nimble when you change direction. The shifter is nice, it's crisp, everything is where you want it to be. It is as factory gets. Everything is where it should be. There's no modifications, there's no stupid little ticky-tack additions, there's no repainted trim panels. Everything is nice in Nissan in here. About the only modification we have is this really nice round Nismo shift knob, which is always one of my favorites to have if we're making any interior modifications. The stock seats in an R34 Coupe are the same whether you get a GT or a GTT, and they look nice. They're comfortable, they hold you in pretty well, and the most important thing about them, in my opinion, they do not date themselves. They don't look old. They don't immediately remind you of a car from the 90s. They kind of have this timeless look to them. The biggest thing about an R34 to me, and why I encourage people to buy them and get into them and drive them and modify them, is because you're getting a nice experience out of a car like this. The 32 and the 33 are great cars. I've had both of them. We have run in tons of those cars, and they're awesome. But with the R34, you take one further step closer to the 21st century. The modernization in here, the nice amenities, the quietness, the lack of rattles is something that's tangible and worth a lot for a driver like me. Underneath the skin, the 32, the 33, the 34 all share lots of common parts, but when you get into an R34, it's a car that's much more livable. The same goes for the S chassis as well. The 13 and the 14 are incredible cars that are capable of so much, but you get into an S15 and you think, I could drive this every day. And it makes all the right noises. And having a chassis with only 80,000 kilometers on it means that all of the bushings in the front, the tie rod ends, the lower control arms, these things that all tend to need to be replaced pretty often on these R chassis 34s, they're just fine. Everything feels nice and tight. I want to give a big shout out to Nissan, because Nissan has made these cars basically like Lego. Everything about these things is just easy to put together. They're nice to work on, they're rewarding to tune. Everything you put into these cars, you get back out of them. And in the sense of having a car with an engine swap, there are some platforms where I would want to take a deeper look and make sure that the work was done right, because there isn't always a straightforward way to do engine and transmission swaps just like you can on these cars. Whereas on an R34, going from an RB20 to an RB25 or an RB25 non-turbo to a turbo, these things are just an afterthought, really. I mean, if you take an engine out of these cars, you might as well put the better engine back in, because it's going to be just as much work to put a better, bigger turbo engine in as it would be to put the original engine back in. The transmission tunnel and the opener for the shifter is the same between the two cars. You don't have to play around with any sort of welding or cutting, things like that. Everything is more or less already set up for a manual swap. To put in a clutch master on this car, all you have to do is remove a pre-cut piece of insulation on the firewall, which they've already marked for you, and the holes where the master goes through, as well as its 2 bolt holes on the clutch pedal bracket, are already marked for you on the firewall. You don't even have to do any guesswork measuring. It's already done for you by Nissan. What you end up with is a very, very low risk engine and transmission swap on a car that is much more likely to have led a better life than its manual turbo counterpart. But time and time again, what I hear from customers and people that are looking for these cars is that they want a good base platform. They don't want something that somebody has already gone through and put their own touches on. They want a nice starting platform for them to go ahead and execute their vision on what the perfect Skyline should be. And in my opinion, the best way to do that is to buy a car that was originally an auto or originally a non-turbo, something that takes a little bit of that performance edge off, because it's much less likely to have been thrashed, drifted, abused, over its whole life. Overall, I think you're just going to get a better, cleaner car. And that's what this is. All of the tricky parts of doing an engine swap, the transmission, the drive shaft, the clutch pedal, all of the numerous things that you have to go through and change have already been done, and they've been done well. The power band on these is really good, just because this is a bone stock car. There's no performance mods, none of this. It's still running bone stock wastegate pressure boost, and it just has a nice run right at about 2,800 RPM. The VVTi gets the turbo to spool a little bit earlier, and it just shoves you back in your seats. The Neo is my favorite RV, hands down. It's got all of the bug fixes, the patch notes, everything about it just feels really good. The clutch is light. It doesn't have to be anything with a lot of clamping force. It doesn't have to have a super heavy pedal that's going to make your thigh sore in stop and go traffic. It's stock torque and stock power, so the clutch can be fairly light and really usable, so that you don't even really think about it when you use it. It's got power everywhere. It doesn't fall off up top. I'll pick up a little bit of speed here. Man, this feels good. The pedals are exactly where they should be. One of my favorite pedal boxes is the stock R34, because you can just effortlessly slide your foot over and let it heel toe. Yeah, there we go. It's a really quick car. It's making, 260, 270 wheel horsepower. It's just a nice, usable horsepower. It's not an incredibly fast car. You're not gonna put a gap cam on the window and race people on the highway, but it's really good out of the box. And this is a Skyline. This is an RV. You can do anything you want to this car. Whatever you put into it, it gives you back. It's a rewarding car to tune. You can make it as fast as you can handle, or I guess as fast as your wallet can handle, but it'll take it. It's a blank canvas. It's ready for a paintbrush. It's ready for whatever the next owner wants to do with it. If they want to keep it like this, they want to keep it stock, I say power to them. The thing works great. Yes, it does drive great. It's a really, really good driving car. Inevitably, there's going to be two camps here. There's going to be plenty of people out there that might watch this video and say that, well, factory original is always the best. And I completely understand that. And in most cases, I completely agree. Having something that's factory original when you're keeping the car original is a really good thing to have. But when it's a car like a Skyline where, like I said, the parts are like Legos and it's so easy to do these things, you can get a car that's super duper clean, hasn't been thrashed its whole life, and it's a little cheaper than the other ones. And in my opinion, it's kind of the way to buy them. If you're a guy that likes working on the car and you want something that you can do your own stuff to, this is the type of car to buy. I'm not saying you have to buy this one. You should, because it's a great deal and a great car. But this is the type of car to buy. It really helps that you can buy pretty much anything you need to do a swap on these cars from Nissan. Nissan will sell you everything you need. We do tons of work like this on customer cars, on cars that we have coming in, on my own personal cars. And it's just kind of simple, Go to your Nissan dealership, tell them which part numbers you need, they'll ship them in. It's pretty damn great. Factory clutch pedal brackets and assemblies that just bolt straight into your firewall. Clutch masters. You can go to companies like Z1 and get braided clutch lines for these things. I mean, everything about it It's just kind of off the shelf and super easy. There's tons of information out there. You can read the factory service manual. That gives you a pretty good idea on how to do this. Or you can find forum posts from places like Skyline Australia and Skyline owners. And, it's really great because we get these cars when they're 25 years old. The Japanese have had them their whole lives. The Australians have had them forever. The Irish have had them forever. The English have had them forever. So it's just a good car to buy if you like working on your car and you like making something cool. Thanks for watching.